Her world had given up on her, but he wasn't from her world. The Reluctant Guardians. The Scavenger's prize wasn't much of a ship. Retrofitted from an old mining vessel, its hull bore the scars of a dozen close encounters with space debris and not-so-friendly craft. The life support systems wheezed more than functioned, and the navigation console had been cobbled together from 3 different models. But it was hers, Captain Nora Vega's ticket to freedom in the vast emptiness between colonies. And that freedom was worth everything. Nora ran her fingers through her short, graying hair as she studied the manifest on her console. The Proxima Mining Corporation had contracted her for a simple job: salvage an abandoned research vessel on the edge of the Cygnus Arm, bring back any usable equipment, and destroy the rest. Standard work for a woman with a reputation for discretion and no questions asked. Status check Jinx, she called to her ship's AI. All systems functioning within acceptable parameters, Captain, Jinx replied, its voice a pleasant contralto with just enough static to remind her it needed maintenance she couldn't afford. Approaching salvage target in 17 minutes. Nora sighed, checking the straps on her worn leather jacket and the blaster holstered at her hip. Prepare docking procedures and run a life sign scan. Scanning, no life signs detected, Captain. Good, the last thing she needed was survivors. Survivors meant complications, and complications meant less profit. She'd learned that lesson the hard way. The abandoned research vessel came into view, a sleek cylinder design with the telltale blue markings of Proxima Corp's scientific division. It drifted silently, external lights dead, looking like a metal coffin against the backdrop of distant stars. Docking went smoothly, the magnetic locks engaging with a reassuring thunk that vibrated through her boots. Nora secured her oxygen mask, she didn't trust the air quality in abandoned ships, and made her way through the airlock. The Nebula Explorer was cold, emergency lights casting eerie blue shadows across the corridors. Her footsteps echoed as she moved efficiently through the ship, marking valuable equipment for retrieval. The lab sections contained the usual array of analytical devices, all top grade and worth a small fortune on the black market. Jinx, mark sections 3 through 7 for full evacuation, she said into her comm unit. I'll check the storage bays for any biological samples worth preserving. The lower decks were darker, the emergency power having been redirected to maintain the labs. Nora switched on her wrist light, illuminating the path ahead as she descended to the cargo hold. The first thing she noticed was the smell, a sweet, earthy scent that reminded her of the hydroponics gardens on Luna Station where she'd spent her childhood. Then came the cold. The temperature here was significantly lower than the rest of the ship. Jinx, are you getting any strange readings from Cargo Bay 3? She asked, her hand instinctively moving to her blaster. Negative, Captain, no life signs detected. Nora frowned. Something felt off, but she continued forward, her light scanning across rows of large metal containers. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary until she reached the far corner of the hold. A container had been modified, the standard locking mechanism bypassed and replaced with a crude but effective alternative. Small ventilation holes had been drilled along its sides. Her instincts screamed danger, but curiosity won out. She approached cautiously, weapon drawn, and released the lock. The container didn't explode, it didn't even make a sound. But as the door swung open, 3 pairs of eyes glowing a soft amber in the darkness stared back at her. Shit, Nora whispered, stepping back. The largest figure moved forward protectively, shielding the smaller 2 behind it. In the wash of her wrist light, she could see they weren't human. Their skin was a pale blue-gray with intricate patterns that seemed to shimmer across their faces. The adult, she assumed it was an adult, had elegant, elongated features with no visible hair, just a series of ridges that started at the forehead and disappeared beneath their simple clothing. Please, the creature said, its voice melodic but strained. We mean no harm. Nora blinked in surprise. You speak standard. I am Corvin, the alien continued, maintaining his protective stance. These are my children, Lyra and Tal. We seek asylum. The children peered around their father, one barely reaching his waist, the other about half Nora's height. Their eyes held the same amber glow but were wider, more innocent. The smaller one clutched what appeared to be a crude doll made from spare fabric. This is a Proxima Corp vessel, Nora said flatly, not a refugee ship. We had no choice, Corvin replied. Our world, Lyridia, was deemed valuable for its mineral deposits. We were in the way. The story was depressingly familiar. Corporate expansion didn't slow for indigenous populations, especially in the outer reach where regulation was a joke at best. How did you get on board? Nora asked, lowering her weapon slightly but keeping it ready. I was a translator for the research team, Corvin explained. When they were recalled suddenly, I hid my children and myself in this container. We hope to reach a neutral station. The smaller child Tal, she reminded herself, stepped forward slightly, clutching the doll tighter. Are you going to hurt us? The child asked, voice trembling. Something twisted in Nora's chest, an emotion she'd thought long buried beneath years of survival and solitude. No, she said quickly, then grimaced at her own response. But I can't help you either. I'm contracted to salvage this ship and destroy what remains. Please, Corvin said, his voice dropping to a desperate whisper. They will kill us if we are found. My children are the last of our family line. Nora holstered her weapon and stepped back, running a hand through her hair in frustration. This isn't my problem. I don't get involved in corporate politics. Not politics, the alien corrected gently, survival. The older child, Lyra, moved forward then. Unlike her father and brother, she showed no fear, only a quiet dignity that seemed incongruous with her young age. We can work, she offered. Father knows many languages and sciences. I can learn to help with your ship. Nora laughed, a short, bitter sound. Kid, you don't understand. If Proxima finds out I helped you, I'm dead. My contract specifically states all unauthorized biological entities are to be reported and contained. She turned away, intending to close the container and pretend she had never seen them. It was the smart play, the safe play. She'd survived this long by minding her own business and looking out for herself. Captain Jinx's voice came through her comm unit. Proxima security vessel approaching, ETA 4 minutes. Nora cursed, what the hell are they doing here? The retrieval team isn't due for another 12 hours. Unknown, Captain, they are not responding to standard identification protocols. She glanced back at the aliens. Corvin had gathered his children close, his expression one of resigned despair. They had known this was coming, had probably expected it from the moment they were discovered. Damn it, Nora muttered, making a decision she knew she would regret. Jinx, prep for immediate departure. Disengage docking clamps on my mark. Captain, the AI questioned. Just do it, she snapped, then turned to Corvin. You three with me now and stay quiet. The relief on the alien's face was painful to watch. He whispered something to his children in their native language, a flowing, musical sound, and they quickly followed Nora out of the cargo bay. The journey back to the scavenger's prize was tense, Nora constantly checking behind them for signs of the approaching security team. They reached the airlock just as Jinx announced the security vessel was initiating docking procedures on the opposite side of the research ship. Get in, Nora ordered, practically shoving the aliens through the airlock into her ship. She followed quickly, sealing the door behind her. Jinx, disengage now and plot a course through the debris field in Sector 7. The ship lurched as the docking clamps released, and Nora rushed to the cockpit, leaving the aliens standing uncertainly in the cramped corridor. Security vessel is hailing us, Captain, Jinx reported. Ignore it, she replied, sliding into the pilot's seat and taking manual control. Mask our signature and give me full power to engines. The scavenger's prize pulled away from the research vessel, accelerating toward the dense field of asteroid fragments that provided the perfect cover for a ship trying to disappear. They are pursuing, Captain, Jinx informed her. Nora smiled grimly, feeling the familiar rush of adrenaline. Let them try. No one knows these fields better than me. She glanced back to see Corvin and his children watching her from the cockpit entrance, their faces a mixture of fear and hope. Find somewhere to secure yourselves, she told them. This is going to get rough. As the ship dove into the swirling mass of rock and ice, pursued by the sleek Proxima security vessel, Nora wondered what the hell she had just gotten herself into. She wasn't a hero, wasn't even particularly kind most days. She was a survivor, a scavenger living on the fringes of society. And yet, something about those children's eyes, about the desperate courage of a father trying to save his family, had awakened something she thought long dead inside her. Captain, Corvin said quietly as he secured his children in the small alcove behind the cockpit seats. Thank you. Nora didn't respond, focusing instead on the controls as she wove between massive chunks of space debris, pushing her ship to its limits. But in the reflection of the viewport, she caught a glimpse of Tal clutching his doll, eyes wide with wonder rather than fear as he watched the stars stream by. And despite herself, despite the danger and the complication and the sheer stupidity of what she'd just done, Nora felt the faintest smile tug at her lips. She wasn't a hero, she wasn't a savior. But maybe just this once, she could be something more than just a survivor. Beyond the stars, the scavenger's prize shuddered as another piece of debris glanced off its shield. In the cramped cockpit, Nora's hands danced across the controls, guiding the reluctant vessel through the asteroid field with a precision that defied the ship's age and condition. Proxima security vessel still in pursuit, Captain, Jinx announced. They are requesting immediate surrender and return of stolen property. Nora snorted. Property, of course that's what they're calling them. She glanced back at Corvin, who sat with his children huddled close. The young boy Tal had fallen asleep despite the danger, exhaustion finally claiming him. Lyra remained alert, her amber eyes tracking every movement Nora made at the controls. I apologize for bringing this trouble to you, Corvin said softly. We had no right to endanger your life. Bit late for that now, Nora replied, but there was no real bite to her words. She banked the ship sharply around a tumbling rock formation, using the gravitational pull to slingshot them deeper into the debris field. Besides, I made my choice. A choice she was still trying to understand. For years, she'd lived by a simple code: take the job, get paid, survive another day. No entanglements, no causes, no heroes. The galaxy was too vast and indifferent for heroism to matter. Yet here she was, harboring fugitives from one of the largest corporations in the sector, putting everything she'd built at risk for a family of aliens she'd met mere hours ago. Their weapons systems are charging, Jinx warned. Typical, Nora muttered. Jinx, route auxiliary power to rear shields and prepare the mining charges. Mining charges, Captain. A rare grin spread across Nora's face. Sometimes the best defense is a really big distraction. She reached for a switch protected by a clear plastic cover, flipping it open and pressing the button beneath. From the rear of the scavenger's prize, 6 cylindrical objects ejected, tumbling into the path of the pursuing vessel. Jinx, detonate on my mark, she ordered, watching the trajectory of the charges. Now. The explosion wasn't massive. Mining charges were designed to break up asteroids for collection, not as weapons. But in the confined space of the debris field, the effect was spectacular. Rock fragments scattered in all directions, creating a chaotic cloud that obscured sensors and threatened to breach even military-grade shields. The Proxima security vessel veered off sharply, prioritizing survival over pursuit. Nice, Nora whispered, allowing herself a moment of satisfaction before turning her attention back to their escape. Jinx, plot a course to the Rust Belt. We need to disappear for a while. The Rust Belt? Corvin questioned, concern evident in his melodic voice. Is that not where outlaws and pirates gather? Exactly, Nora confirmed, which makes it the perfect place for people who don't want to be found. The Rust Belt was the unofficial name for an abandoned mining sector, where hollowed-out asteroids and derelict stations provided sanctuary for those living outside the law. It wasn't safe, not by any standard definition, but it operated on a different currency than the corporate worlds: respect, favors, and the understanding that everyone there had something to hide. As the scavenger's prize limped toward this haven of last resort, Nora finally had a moment to truly consider her passengers. The Lyridians were not what she had expected. Despite their circumstances, they carried themselves with dignity. Corvin, especially, seemed to possess a quiet strength that reminded her of her father before the drink and despair had taken him. Your children, she said abruptly, breaking the silence that had fallen over the cockpit. They're holding up well. Corvin looked down at his sleeping son and vigilant daughter with an expression that transcended species, pride mingled with worry. They are resilient, he said. On Lyridia, our people believe that strength comes not from never falling but from how we rise after each fall. They have fallen far and still they rise. Lyra, who had been silent until now, spoke up. Father was a scholar before the corporations came. He taught at the great library of Vaughn. And what did you teach, Professor? Nora asked, curiosity getting the better of her. Comparative xenology, Corvin replied with what Nora recognized as the Lyridian equivalent of a smile, a subtle illumination of the patterns on his face. The study of how different species develop similar social and ethical structures despite evolving separately. Nora couldn't help but laugh. Well, that's ironic. Indeed, Corvin agreed, his pattern light dimming. I spent my life studying how sentient beings find common ground, only to discover that greed is perhaps the most universal trait of all. Not universal, Nora found herself saying, surprising even herself, just loud. 4 days later, the scavenger's prize docked at a station known simply as Lockjaw, one of the larger settlements in the Rust Belt. It had once been a corporate refueling depot before being abandoned during the Mineral Wars, and now served as a neutral trading post for those who preferred to remain off official registries. Nora had spent the journey evaluating options, none of them good. Proxima wouldn't give up easily, not because 3 Lyridians mattered to them particularly, but because corporations never admitted defeat. Her ship was now flagged in every corporate system, her salvage license almost certainly revoked. Everything she had built was effectively gone. And yet, watching Corvin teaching his children about star navigation in the quiet hours of their journey, or seeing Tal's face light up when she showed him how to operate the food synthesizer, she couldn't bring herself to regret her decision. "We'll need new identities," she explained as they prepared to disembark. "And I know someone who can help, but he doesn't work cheap." "We have nothing to offer," Corvin admitted. "All we possessed was left behind." Nora nodded, having expected as much. "I still have some credits and goods to trade. We'll manage." She paused, noticing Lyra watching her intently. "What? Why are you helping us?" the girl asked directly. "You gain nothing." The question struck Nora silent. Why indeed? She had been asking herself the same thing since they fled the research vessel. "I don't know," she answered honestly. "Maybe I'm tired of looking the other way, or maybe I just don't like bullies even when they wear corporate logos." Lyra seemed to consider this, then nodded as if it made perfect sense. Lockjaw Station was a maze of narrow corridors and repurposed cargo bays, home to a population that valued privacy above all else. Nora led the Lyridians through the less populated areas, keeping them close as they navigated toward the lower levels where her contact operated. But trouble found them before they reached their destination. A group of 4 humans blocked their path, led by a tall woman with a cybernetic eye that whirred as it focused on them. "Captain Vega," the woman said, her voice artificially smooth. "Imagine finding you here with such unusual companions." "Brenner," Nora acknowledged, carefully positioning herself in front of the Lyridians. "Didn't think corporate hunters worked this far out." "Freelance now," Brenner corrected with a cold smile. "And Proxima pays very well for the return of stolen property." "We are not property," Corvin stated firmly, stepping forward despite Nora's attempt to shield them. "We are refugees seeking asylum from corporate exploitation." Brenner raised an eyebrow. "It speaks well, might fetch an even higher price." Nora's hand moved to her blaster. "They're under my protection." "Oh," Brenner laughed. "And what exactly does that mean out here, where protection is bought and sold like everything else?" The tension was broken by a new voice, deep and rumbling from behind Brenner's group. "It means you're outnumbered, Brenners." A massive figure emerged from the shadows, Commander Orrin Reed, former Alliance military turned independent trader, and one of the few people Nora might cautiously call a friend. Behind him stood 3 of his crew, all armed and looking decidedly unfriendly. "This isn't your business, Reed," Brenner warned, though her confident posture faltered slightly. "Nora made it my business," Reed replied simply. "Now you have 2 choices, walk away now or be carried away later, your call." For a moment it seemed Brenner would choose conflict. Her hand twitched toward her weapon, cybernetic eye calculating odds, but eventually self-preservation won out. "This isn't over, Vega," she spat before signaling her team to withdraw. "Proxima never forgets a debt." After they disappeared around a corner, Reed turned to Nora with a look of exasperation. "When you said you needed help, I assumed it was the usual trouble, angry clients, customs disputes, not corporate fugitives." "Surprise," Nora offered weakly. Reed sighed, then looked at the Lyridians with undisguised curiosity. "Well, you'd better come with me before someone else spots your blue friends here. We can talk somewhere safer." Reed's somewhere safer turned out to be his ship, the Second Chance, docked in a private bay at the far end of the station. It was a former military transport, modified for trading but still bearing the unmistakable hull reinforcements of a vessel designed for conflict zones. Once aboard, Corvin explained their situation more fully, while the children were given food and shown to a small cabin where they could rest. Reed listened without interruption, his weathered face giving nothing away until the story was complete. "So," he finally said, turning to Nora, "you threw away your career and probably your life for them. That doesn't sound like the Nora Vega I know." Nora stared into her mug of synthetic coffee, unable to meet his gaze. "Maybe you never knew me. Or maybe you're finally remembering who you were before Callus Station," he suggested quietly. Nora flinched at the mention of the place where she had lost everything, her former crew, her reputation, her belief in humanity. The place where she had decided that caring was a luxury she could no longer afford. "What do you want me to say, Orrin? That I had a moment of weakness? That I'll regret it when Proxima finally catches up to us?" "No," Reed replied, surprising her. "I want you to admit that this might be the first right thing you've done in years, that maybe, just maybe, you're not as dead inside as you pretend to be." She wanted to snap back to deny it, but Corvin spoke first. "On my world," he said gently, "we have a concept called kavi, the moment when one recognizes their true path. It is rarely comfortable, often painful, but always necessary for growth." Reed laughed. I like him. You would, Nora muttered, but there was no bite to it. They spent the night aboard the Second Chance, planning their next move. Reed offered passage to the outer colonies where corporate influence was minimal, but the journey would be long and dangerous. Proxima had undoubtedly alerted their network by now, and every scanner between here and Safe Harbor would be looking for them. Late that night, unable to sleep, Nora found herself in the ship's small observation deck. To her surprise, Lyra was already there, staring out at the stars. Couldn't sleep, Nora asked, moving to stand beside her. The girl shook her head. The stars look different here. On Lyridia, our constellations told stories of our ancestors. Here, I don't know what they say. They say whatever you want them to, Nora replied. That's the thing about space, it's a blank canvas. Lyra considered this. Father says you saved us because you are a good person, despite what you believe about yourself. Nora snorted. Your father gives me too much credit. No, Lyra said with surprising firmness. He sees clearly, you hide your light, but it is there. Before Nora could respond, alarms blared throughout the ship. Reed's voice came over the comm system, urgent but controlled. Nora, get to the bridge, we've got company. On the bridge, Reed was already at the controls, with Corvin standing tensely nearby, Tal clutched in his arms. Proxima security vessels, 3 of them, Reed explained as Nora entered. They're blockading the station exits. How did they find us so quickly? Nora demanded. Reed's expression was grim. Brenner must have alerted them after our encounter. Station security just announced they're conducting a search for dangerous fugitives with a substantial reward for information. Dangerous, Nora laughed bitterly, a scholar and 2 kids. Dangerous to prophets, Corvin said quietly, the most unforgivable crime. Nora looked at the tactical display, mind racing. 3 security vessels meant they couldn't simply run. The Second Chance was well armed, but not against those odds. The station itself was no sanctuary, credits would loosen tongues, and there were too many desperate people in the Rust Belt to count on collective honor. We need a diversion, she said finally, and I have an idea, but you're not going to like it. Reed raised an eyebrow. Those are usually your best ones. Her plan was simple in concept, if not execution. Use the scavenger's prize as bait, drawing off the security vessels while the Second Chance escaped with the Lyridians. Jinx would pilot her ship on a pre-programmed course, broadcasting signals that would make it appear the aliens were aboard. Absolutely not, Corvin protested when she explained. We will not allow you to sacrifice yourself. I'm not sacrificing anything, Nora insisted. I'll program Jinx to lead them on a chase while I hide on your ship. Once we're clear, my ship will self-destruct, leaving no evidence. And what then? Reed asked quietly. You'll have no ship, no identity, nothing. Nora looked at Corvin and his children. This family she had somehow, against all odds and her own better judgment, decided to protect. I'll have done something that matters, she said simply, for once. The plan worked, but not without complications. The scavenger's prize departed first, broadcasting continuous distress signals that suggested a damaged ship with desperate fugitives aboard. 2 of the security vessels took the bait, pursuing the decoy into open space. The Second Chance slipped out during the confusion, using a maintenance tunnel rarely monitored. But the 3rd security vessel, captained by someone sharper than their colleagues, realized the ruse too quickly and gave chase. What followed was a desperate battle through an uncharted asteroid cluster, with Reed demonstrating why he had once been considered the Alliance's finest tactical pilot. The security vessel was faster, better armed, but lacked the intimate knowledge of unconventional space that came from years of operating beyond the law. In the end, it was Nora who delivered the decisive blow, using the Second Chance's mining laser to trigger a cascade explosion in a volatile asteroid, crippling their pursuers' engines and buying them the time needed to escape into deep space. Hours later, with the danger finally behind them, Nora stood once more at the observation window. The familiar weight of loss pressed against her chest, her ship, her independence, her carefully constructed solitude all gone. And yet there was something else there too, something lighter, almost unfamiliar. Is this seat taken? Corvin's voice broke into her thoughts. She gestured to the empty space beside her, and he settled there, his movements fluid and graceful despite his exhaustion. My children are finally asleep, he said. Tal insisted on drawing you a picture first. He says it's a thank you gift for saving us. He handed her a small piece of synthetic paper covered in colorful markings. Nora studied it, eventually making out what appeared to be 4 figures holding hands, 3 blue, 1 pink.